our organizers. Ayan. Okay. We would like to thank our organizers. We have our main organizer, yung CE for Lenny or Civil Engineers for Lenny, and also our supporting organizers, the group of engineers for Lenny. And also we have the cooperating student organization, the JPIs, or the Junior Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers. Okay, so thank you po for your support. Yan. Now also, if you are interested, we have this is already our 10th web talk. Okay, so if you are interested to view the previous web talks, you can go to our FB page or our YouTube page through the following links. Ayan, you can find there the recordings of the previous web talks on these different topics. Ayan, sige. So, yung ating FB page po, you can easily search for the FB page by typing in Lugaw ng Kaalaman, CE Web Talks. And also for the YouTube page, you can also just type into sa search bar Lugaw ng Kaalaman. Okay, sige. So for today po, this is our 10th Web Talk, and our focus for today is on traffic, or ang ating topic po today ay traffic, transportasyon, may patutunguhan ka pa. Okay, sige po. Our speakers today, ayan, Doc Andy, I think you can share na po the slide for the 10th web talk. Ayan. Ayan, sige po.
Sige, introduce ko na muna yung mga topic.
Sige po. So today, our web talk is on traffic at transportasyon, may patutunguhan ka pa. Ayan. Our speakers for today are Dr. DAYO Montalbo, a civil engineer professor in urban and regional planning, and Dr. ALEXIS FILLONE, also a civil engineer, environmental planner, and a professor. Ayan, so before we start with our web talk today, let's first view the following messages. Ayan. Sige po, Doc Andy, I think we can proceed with the videos po.
Introduce ko muna, may birthday greetings ka.
Ayan. So we also have here a video for birthday greetings from the team po to Lenny, to our Vice President Lenny Robredo. Ayan. So happy birthday po, and we have this short video. Ayan.
Ang civil engineers and community of engineers for Lenny Kiko ay babati ng masayang kaarawan sa ating Vice Presidente Lenny Robredo, ang ilaw ng tahanan ng Republika ng Pilipinas. Isa po kayong inspirasyon sa bayan na naghahangad ng isang mahusay at gobyernong tapat. Happy birthday, Madam VP Lenny Robredo.
Happy birthday, Madam VP Lenny. Thank you so much for fighting for our country. We are with you in this fight. We will continue to campaign for you, and we always pray for you. We pray that the good Lord empowers you in all the things that you need to accomplish, so that come May 9, you will be President of the Philippines. Good evening.
Maligayang bati, VP Lenny, sa inyong karawan. Kayo po ay hulog ng langit para sa buong Pilipinas. Ipagpatuloy lang po ninyo ang inyong pagmamalasakit, at kami po ay buong pusong nasa inyong likod. We wish you the very best, and ipanalo natin ito.
Madam VP Lenny, maraming salamat po sa pagbibigay ng inspirasyon sa aming lahat na nangangarap ng isang magandang bukas para sa bayan, at sa pagbibigay ng mabuting halimbawa sa tunay na kahulugan ng pagkakaisa. Maligayang kaarawan po, at naway gabayan po kayo palagi ng Panginoong may kapal.
Happy birthday to you, Madam President. First of all, nais kong magpasalamat sa iyo para sa lahat ng sakripisyong ginagawa mo para sa ating bayan, para sa ating mga kababayan, lalo sa mga nangangailangan ng tulong na binibigay mo ng buong puso. Wala kang hinihinging kapalit sa kanila. Malaking bagay yan. You're a very loving person, you're a very caring person. Nagdadasalan ko para sa birthday mo, first of all, good health for you, safety for you and your family from all forms of oppression, from all forms of evil that continue to attack you. Also, sa pang-birthday wish ko para sa iyo is a responsible and supportive Philippine population that will always be behind you in all your endeavors. We are praying for the best for this country. We are praying that all your efforts here will bear fruit para sa lahat. Sabi mo, the last man standing is a woman, but the first people standing with her should be the Filipino people. Happy birthday po ulit, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful birthday greeting from our engineers all over the world po, no. So it's we really wish Vice President or our future President Leni Robredo a really happy birthday today. Ayan. So paramdam po natin sa kanya ang ating pagmamahal by supporting her not only in this election but also throughout her presidency. Ayan. Sige po. So paulit-ulit pong na-mention sa akin ng wife ko po na si Leni Robredo ay isang Taurus. Okay, so dahil April 23 po siya and ang Taurus po ay ano po dapat pinagkakatiwalaan po, trustworthy. And naniniwala po ako na trustworthy din po talaga si ating VP Leni Robredo at pwede po nating pagtiwalaan na dadalhin niya po tayo sa sa tamang direction po. And nakita po natin na talagang si VP Leni Robredo meron po siyang plano. So dito makikita po natin may video tayo sa mga programa ni VP Leni Robredo sa ating infrastruktura. Sige po. Ay, ayan.
Most definitely, Mike. Infrastructure will most definitely remain a priority. But we must ensure that we are building in a strategic, impactful manner and not just building for the sake of saying we're building. And to this end, we will focus our infrastructure policy on 3 priority areas. The first one of that is water resources management. The second one is public transport and rural development. And the third one is reconstruction of public infrastructure and housing projects in calamity-stricken areas. Let me just give a brief summary of the 3 priority areas, Mike. The MWSS has already raised concerns that water levels in the Angat Dam might go below minimum by April. Nakakatakot to. In fact, before the pandemic, nagkaroon na tayo ng problema with water supply. And while being prudent in consumption will help, the long-term solution really entails investing in critical infrastructure and ensuring that it is well maintained. So sa akin talaga, Mike, importante sa akin yung focus on water resources management that will provide clean water for all by harnessing available water resources, implement projects for water impounding in major rivers of the country. Meron na nitong study, Mike. There is already a study of how this should be done, anchored on alin ng mga rivers sa bansa natin yung pwedeng gamitin. And the second priority area is public transport and rural development. Alam naman natin yung public transport, matagal na natin ito problema. People are stuck in traffic for hours and private cars still dominate the roads and our mass transport system remains inefficient. And para sa akin, this is really one key stumbling block to growth. People are wasting so much time inside their vehicles or waiting for rides, wasting valuable time that can otherwise be used more productively. So we must build with a mindset of moving people rather than just cars. And that is why public transport must be top of mind in any infrastructure agenda. But having said that, we would also like to prioritize the decongestion of major population centers such as NCR, Cebu, Davao, and all the other major metropolitan areas. We will provide major food production centers with better access to markets. Tapos yung pangatlo, and ito talaga, I am sure everyone will agree that we should invest in digital infrastructure, especially in the countryside. And the third priority area, Mike, yung sabi ko kaninang reconstruction of public infrastructure and housing projects in calamity-stricken areas. Kasi the recent calamities, Typhoon Odette last December and typhoons Kinta, Rolly, and Ulysses in 2020 have just brought into sharper, more painful focus the cycle we are stuck in. A cycle of devastation and reconstruction that has stunted our economic momentum for so long. Umikot ako ng umikot after Typhoon Odette, and really the devastation is huge, pero maraming mga areas na sila din yung tinatamaan each and every time. So we plan to create resettlement sites for fully damaged houses in dangerous and climate vulnerable areas. And we will provide climate resilient public housing for affected families as permanent resettlements. Ito kasi it has been drained. Pag hindi natin pinag-isipan ng maayos, it has been draining our coffers year in and year out.
Okay, so nakikita naman natin kung sino talaga ang ating kandidato na mayroong plano at naiintindihan ang totoong pangangailangan natin, 'di ba? So kailangan natin ng pinunong nakakakita sa kung ano yung kailangan natin, nakakaintindi sa kung ano ba yung dapat nating pina-prioritize. Yan. So today ang atin pong focus topic for this web talk is on transportation, and to introduce our speakers for today, we have Doc Reg. Ayan, Doc Reg.
Magandang hapon sa lahat, and sana po ay lahat tayo ay maganda yung audio at yung kanyang mga video sa live feed natin ngayon hapon via Facebook. I have the pleasure to introduce yung ating first speaker this afternoon. Si Dr. DAYO Montalbo, ay nagtapos sa University of the Philippines, Diliman, at sa University of Tsukuba sa Japan, kung saan siya ay nag-aaral ng Urban and Regional Planning. Siya ngayon ay isang profesor sa UP School of Urban and Regional Planning, and fellow din po siya sa National Center for Transportation Studies. Advocate po ng public transportation si Dr. DAYO Montalbo, at ang mga research interest niya ay sustainable transport, public transport, transit-oriented development, land use, and transport interaction. So without further ado, take it away, Dr. DAYO Montalbo.
Thank you very much, Reg. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I think I don't have to give this presentation because Vice President Lenny actually gets it. She already told us in that video the gist of what Alex and I will be presenting this afternoon, and that is to give priority to public transport being an important sustainable transport. But I have to do my job this afternoon, and that is to deliver a presentation on sustainable transport. So allow me to share my screen now. Okay, I trust that you can see my screen in slide presentation mode. Again, yes, magandang hapon. Thank you, Rox. Thank you, Reg, for the introduction. Sayang kasabay natin yung rally sa Pasay, pero kanya-kanya naman tayong papel dito sa pagsuporta natin sa mga tamang mamumuno ng ating bansa sa darating na 6 na taon. So, sa puntong ito, hayaan ninyo ako na dalhin kayo sa maiksing paglalakbay tungkol sa sustainable transport. Okay, I prepared 35 slides and I'm given around 30 minutes, so I think that that will just be right. Okay, ito ang kwento na ibabahagi ko sa inyo ngayong hapon. May konting background tayo. Tapos ipapaliwanag ko kung ano ang sustainable transport. I will also talk about the important relationship that we have to be mindful of when we are doing transport plans, that it is not just about transport, it's also about land use. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll be talking about some important issues and challenges and where we go from here. Okay. Bilang konteksto ng presentation na ito, ayaw kong sobra lamang tayong ma-focus sa transport and traffic. And by the way, there's probably a need to frame that theme of trying to solve traffic problems, because actually the problem is much deeper and more important than traffic, and that is mobility, the need to move people efficiently, safely, or sustainably. What you see on your screen are the 17 global goals, or the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And all these are very nice aspirations for the countries of the world, which hopefully will be met by 2030. These goals were launched or adopted by the United Nations in 2015. And reckoning time is 2030. And this, as I've said, are all very ideal aspirations for us, for the countries of the world. And the focus that I think that is most relevant to the topic this afternoon is achieving sustainable cities and communities. And transport is an important component, an important way, an indispensable way to achieve sustainable cities and communities. We have to recognize that the world is rapidly urbanizing. About half of the world's population is in urban areas now. The Philippine population at 110 million in 2020 is about 50-50, half in urban and rural areas. Urbanization is good. There are benefits of promoting development to achieve the triple bottom line of any city. And this three-pronged targets are social, economic, and environmental development. It is estimated that by 2050, 2/3, up from the current half or 50%, 2/3 of all humanity will be in urban areas. So you can just imagine the intense competition that people will be experiencing 28 years from now, when 2/3 of the world's population will be competing for space in the cities of the world. Without management and control, social costs may outweigh the benefits of urbanization. And as I've said, transport is an important mechanism. It is an important intervention. It is an important enabling mechanism for development. And we need transport to support cities as well as create or contribute or achieve sustainable development. Now, the kind of transport that will be synergetic or consistent with sustainable development is sustainable transport, that which is supportive of the economic, social, and environmental goals of our cities. Sustainable transport is also defined as transport that is economically, socially, and environmentally friendly or sustainable. There are many words that are associated or are relevant to sustainable transport, as you can see in the slide now. You have this long list of words that are associated or linked with sustainable transport. Now, some of these concepts I'll be talking about this afternoon. I won't be talking the whole time in this 30-minute session. I'll be showing some pictures I've curated, which depict sustainable and unsustainable situations. Now we have here some photos, some taken from the internet, some taken from my own camera, showing either sustainable or unsustainable transport. Most of these photographs depict unsustainable situations. I live in Fairview, in northern part of Quezon City, and so I'm very familiar with the situation in Commonwealth. And I've, as far as I can remember, the situation hasn't changed much. And you still see people waiting, not on the sidewalk, even if there are sidewalks, or sometimes there are none, but people waiting right on the carriageway, the road carriageway, waiting for a ride that sometimes doesn't come. Or if it does come, it comes late or it's already crowded. And so these are pictures of some unsustainable transport examples. Here we see a very interesting photo. Foreigners will always find this interesting and adventurous, imagining riding a motorcycle while balancing for your life. We don't have this in Metro Manila, but there are many areas in the Philippines, in the deep south, for example, that have this as a basic or fundamental public transport mode called the habal-habal. This picture here, if you can see my cursor, shows a very narrow sidewalk. This is right beneath the Ortigas MRT3 station. And it's ironic that you have a relatively high capacity public transport system, the EDSA MRT, but directly connecting to a sidewalk that is very low in terms of capacity. Here, this is an original photo I took from my apartment along EDSA. And here you see a typical evening rush hour. This is a 5-6-year-old photo that I took. And at that time, there was no EDSA busway yet. Now, this picture here shows a very congested situation of road lanes occupied mostly by private cars. And you have the EDSA busway here on the inner lane. which shows some promise of sustainable transport, although at present there is still much to be desired in improving and optimizing the EDSA busway. Now, in the course of my work as a sustainable transport advocate, I coined this phrase, dignity of travel, which I think is so lacking in the Philippines. I've had the fortune of living abroad, living in Japan for 7 years, doing my graduate studies. And there I experienced different kinds of transport modes. And I could observe that people don't get judged for the kind of transport choices they make. And so I coined this phrase, dignity of travel, which refers to the ability of people to travel safely, efficiently, economically, and not being judged for the choices that they make, meaning taking public transport and not being considered poor, or riding one's bicycle or walking without being considered poor, or not being stuck in traffic congestion for a long time, and instead being able to spend that amount of time in a more quality way, like spending the time with family or being more productive. Sustainable transport is defined as transport that is supportive of sustainable development. We all know what sustainable development is. It is the kind of development that enables the current generation to achieve their goals without compromising the ability of future generations to achieve their own goals. Now, sustainable transport is that which is supportive of sustainable development. Sustainable transport is inclusive, equitable, and people-centered. VP Robredo was right in saying that it is important to focus on moving people and not cars, and which means that our concern should be enabling people to move from one place to another, and not just giving priority to cars. Sustainable transport is that. And there are different examples of sustainable transport. We have walking and cycling, which are also considered non-motorized transport or active transport. There's transit, also known as public transport. There's carpooling, which means people traveling together to optimize or maximize the use of an otherwise inefficient, environment cruel transport mode, and the use of green vehicles, for instance, electric vehicles. Now, these are examples of sustainable transport modes. And I think there's a snowballing movement for support to sustainable transport. As a transport planner and a sustainable transport advocate, I think it is just important to remember a few things about sustainable transport. The hierarchy, as you can see in the figure, where walking and cycling are in the top tier of the hierarchy, followed by there's cycling there, and then public transport or transit, and then taxis and shared transport, and then private car at the bottom of the heap, because it is the most environment cruel. It is also the least efficient among the transport modes. Now, this hierarchy is based on environmental, economic, and social impacts of these modes. So we have the most sustainable modes on the top tiers of this hierarchy, and the least, and in fact, the unfriendliest mode, which is the private car at the bottom of this hierarchy. Okay. Now, I think there's a need to achieve a logical match between the mode and the trip characteristics. I have the highest respect for active transport advocates. I admire them. I think they're amazing in terms of advocating and believe advocating stable transport and especially active transport and practicing it. There's no better proof of advocacy than actual practice. But we cannot expect everyone, however, to cycle. I think has, or the choice of a mode will have to match the characteristics of the trip. For example, I go home to the province twice a month, and I'm not sure if I can ask my 86-year-old mother to ride a bicycle in commuting between Manila and our province. So there has to be a good match between the kind of trip that is being made and the choice of transport that is being made. It is also important to recognize that a mode is best or optimal or most sustainable for certain trip types. You see, there are different kinds of trips. We transport planners talk about work trips, school trips, shopping trips, business trips, etc. Historically, at least prior to the pandemic, the kinds of trips that take the biggest chunk of the pie, representing all person trips, are work trips and school trips. Now, since these are the trips that are the highest in number, it is important that these trips be taken using the most sustainable mode.
Wala man.
For example, work trips, which are conventionally done at the same time in the morning and usually on the same corridor. There's this concentration of work trips in terms of time, the time they are taken, and in terms of the space where they are conveyed. And because of this concentration of trips, it is important that such trips be served using the most sustainable mode. And in particular, it should be public transport that should take the bulk or should absorb the bulk of work trips. So it's important to recognize that the heaviest trip type should be served by the most sustainable mode. Choices must be made available to avoid the most environmentally and socially damaging mode. Just imagine if every employee or every worker rides a private car going to the workplace and doing this on a daily basis. So we have traffic congestion and the consequent results of traffic congestion. There's wasted man hours, there's air pollution impacts, there's global pollution impacts, GHG emission, there are road safety issues, etc. Now let's talk about specific sustainable transport modes. And I start with NMT, or non-motorized transport. This is also known as active transport. And this refers to walking, which we all do, and cycling. There's a need, I think, for both soft and hard enabling measures to encourage or to promote or to push active transport or non-motorized transport in terms of promotion, social marketing. That means encouraging people to use non-motorized transport, highlighting the benefits of non-motorized transport, not just for the environment, but also for people's health. Another enabling measure for non-motorized transport is infrastructure, either on-street or off-street infrastructure. The actual travel or conveyance infrastructure or facility, and storage of non-motorized transport vehicles or bicycles. There are studies which show that having suitable storage or parking areas for bicycles and shower facilities at destinations, for example, workplaces, can significantly encourage and increase the use of bicycles as a utilitarian mode, as a work trip mode. I'm not just talking of recreational cycling, but utilitarian cycling, which means using a bicycle to go to the workplace. Now, behavior change, meaning people can be encouraged to use non-motorized transport, can be done through carrot and stick. For people to be encouraged to pick sustainable transport choices, it will entail some behavior change, and behavior change can or made possible through rewards and punishments, through incentives and disincentives, or carrot and stick. We penalize people for using private cars. In some cities of the world, there's congestion pricing, which imposes tolls on people who drive to the city center. And but there is a public transport alternative that is made available. So it's not just the use of the stick, but there's also the use of the carrot. Another example in Japan is to encourage people to use transit or public transport is the employer provides a fare, a monthly or season ticket or season fare to use public transport. So the use of public transport is actually subsidized by the employer, and that is one way to encourage the use of public transport. And aside from that, almost the Japanese will almost volunteer to use public transport for their work trips instead of private cars, because it is very difficult and expensive to find parking in city centers in Japanese cities. And aside from that, public transport is reliable and efficient. And so it almost becomes a natural choice to use public transport in Japanese cities instead of private cars, especially for work trips. Now, I show here an example of a good example of non-motorized transport that we can observe locally, and that is the Ayala MRT station of MRT3 and the pedestrian facilities, the network of pedestrian facilities that connects to the Ayala MRT station. And you see from the Ayala MRT station going west, meaning towards Manila. There's a network of pedestrian facilities, either elevated or through air-conditioned buildings or malls that make walking pleasurable. And based on the experience of the proponent, which is Ayala Land and the MASEA, the Makati Commercial Establishments Association, the number of users of the Makati or Ayala Skywalk has increased to 250,000 per day before the pandemic. And the average walking distance has increased from 400 meters to 700 meters. This just goes to show that given the right infrastructure, by making the walking experience pleasurable, you can increase and you can actually promote walking as a viable transport mode. Let's remember that walking is an important transport mode. Okay, these are other non-motorized. The picture you see here is Bonifacio Global City. This is an off-street or off-road bicycle or bikeway in Tsukuba City, Japan. And this is a parking facility for bicyclists in Tsukuba University. Now, non-motorized transport can synergize or work well with transit or public transport, which brings me to my next topic, which is public transport, an important component of sustainable transport. Public transport is defined as a facility that provides service for the movement of people and goods for a fee. So public transport isn't just passenger transport, it's also cargo transport. What is the role of public transport? It is a key strategy in reducing transport externalities or negative effects of transport, such as traffic congestion, burning of fossil fuel, global pollution, local or air pollution, road safety issues, and equity issues, meaning not everyone has access to the private cars. So there those who do not have private cars or who do not have any other ways of mobility must be able to access public transport. Benefits of public transport. Essentially, it is much more efficient than the private car. Here you see the amount of physical space that is required to transport 60 people. On the leftmost picture, you have the space required by private cars that would transport 60 people. And then the middle picture shows a much less amount of space needed to transport the same number of people by a bus and then by bicycles. So graphically, we can see here, and very clearly, we can see here the amount of space or how inefficient private cars are as compared to other transport modes. In 2017, it was estimated that the economic cost of traffic congestion per day for Mega Manila is 3.5 billion pesos. And it is estimated without intervention to increase to 5.4 billion pesos per day in 2035. So that's how serious the problem of traffic congestion is. It is hemorrhaging us in terms of economic costs. Now, when we talk of sustainable transport or transport in general, we cannot just drop or we cannot exclude the discussion of other things. When we talk of transport, it is not just about, or when we talk of sustainable transport, it is not just about transport. It's also about land. It's also about land use. And so if we are to come up with a good transport plan, inevitably, we also have to link with it a suitable land use plan because of the interactive relationship of transport and land use, or land use and transport. Land use activities create the need for people to travel. And this need, which we call travel demand, will have to be served by transport facilities. And if the suitable transport facilities, especially the stable transport facilities or services are made available, then the destination becomes accessible. Now, accessible areas become valuable. And if they are accessible, they become attractive locations of different activities, and land values go up. And with more trips attracted to a destination, there will be a greater need to transport people or to bring people there. And so it is important that sustainable transport does that. Not private cars, but the other transport choices, the sustainable transport choices. Okay. Now, transit-oriented development is an important concept that demonstrates the interactive relationship between land use and transport. TOD is urban development that maximizes the amount of different land use activities within walking distance from a public transport hub, from a station or from a terminal of public transport. TOD refers to the creation of compact, walkable, pedestrian-oriented mixed-use communities centered around transit hubs. Schematically, TOD is shown here. You have this blue dot representing a transit hub, and then radiating from this transit station, you have different land use activities. You have commercial, you have employment, you have leisure activities, you have institutional activities within walking distance from a transit station. Now, TOD promotes compact development, and TOD is consistent with the triple bottom line of cities, the economic, social, and environmental targets of any city. Here I have some examples of transit-oriented development. This is in Tokyo, the Tokyo Station area. Where's the Tokyo Station? It's right there. And then around Tokyo Station are employment and commercial and even leisure destinations. So people don't drive, don't bring their cars to the central area of Tokyo. They take transit. This is BRT, or bus rapid transit, in Curitiba, Brazil. And radiating from the BRT station, you have higher densities of development allowed. Other examples of TOD So here you see the interaction between transport and land use. Now, some issues and challenges before I eat up the time of the next speaker. Okay, there are 4 issues and challenges that I'd like to talk about as we go through the last third of this presentation. First is the disconnect between theory and practice, or disconnect between the ideal and actual situation. Some people think that the solution to traffic congestion, which happens to be the topic this afternoon, ang pag-solve ng traffic, some people think, mistakenly of course, is to build more and more roads. But that is like fighting obesity by buying a bigger pair of pants. Now, why is there really a preference of people for private mobility or the use of private cars? Well, there are nice things about the use of private cars. Flexible, we don't have to run after a schedule. It gives us privacy, it gives us comfort, air-conditioned comfort with nice music. There's security because we can always lock our doors and we are just in our private space. Some people think that to have a car is prestigious, and especially depending on the kind of car you have. Some people think that, and so they would have the propensity to choose private cars. And there may be other reasons, but it's important to be mindful of the collective or public welfare or sustainability impacts of private car choices that we make. There's traffic congestion, burning of fossil fuel. These are the impacts or the externalities of transport, road safety and equity issues. So there seems to be a debate here, or a deadlock, pitting the nice things about private car use and the collective welfare of people. So we would need a strong government and stakeholders to intervene and look for solutions that will benefit our cities, that will benefit the public, not just the car users or car owners. Another example, I think, that shows the discrepancy between what is ideal and actual is our national transport policy, which is a law that was passed in 2018. And it gives priority to mass transport. It is actually written that as a matter of policy, the priority is mass transport in urban areas, high capacity public transport systems, and interconnectivity and modality. And this is just consistent with the definition of sustainable transport. However, do we see that? Are the things we see around us consistent with the national transport policy? So that is one issue, the inconsistency between ideal and actual. Another issue is what I call the Little Prince principle. What did the Little Prince say? What is essential is invisible to the eye. As written by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Relating this to public transport or transport in general, there tends to be a stronger focus on the visible or on the physical or on the tangible, especially for us engineers, when we would tend to focus on what we can see and touch and physically build. So sometimes we are enamored by impressive infrastructure and facilities. We are mesmerized by nice vehicles and by high technology and cool gadgets. But there are soft or invisible components that are sometimes left behind, and they are equally, if not more important than the physical aspects of transport. Here we talk of institutional capacity, public transport reform, the need for champions, public transport system integration, which my dear colleague Alex will be talking about after my presentation, operating arrangements, which we'll also be talking about, finance, communications, and branding. These are non-physical, these are non-tangible components which are equally, if not more important than the physical components of any transport system. I call this the Little Prince principle. The third issue is that I see is the labyrinth of governance that relates to transport in the Philippines. We have a myriad of institutions that are involved in the delivery, in the planning and implementation of transport services in Metro Manila and in other cities of the Philippines. Here you see the list of different government departments, both national and local governments. In fact, I failed to write here local governments. So you have this cacophony of institutions, and there are also constraints in existing legislation. For instance, the EDSA busway proponents are not collecting fares. It is libreng sakay, because the entity behind it, the LTFRB, is not empowered by law to collect fares. So it's libreng sakay up to now, and therefore it is eventually not going to be sustainable, because we cannot provide free transportation or free public transport services forever. In my opinion, there's a need for a public transport authority, or a GOCC, a government-owned and controlled corporation, equipped with the required mandate, responsibilities, and capability. And more than that, we need a leader who will keep everything together, who will keep all our government agencies getting their act together. Recently, a few days ago, over the weekend, we saw how our different transport agencies were pointing fingers at each other and blaming one another in the fiasco of public transport passengers being stuck in the wee hours of the morning, not having a ride, or waiting for a ride at terminals. And that is something that a good leader should be able to manage and to keep together. Lastly, the issue that I see is the political economy of things. Political economy is defined as an interdisciplinary branch of the social sciences that focuses on the interrelationships among individuals, governments, and public policy. It is a study on the relationships and dynamics among different entities, government and stakeholders with respect to public policy. And I think it is important that political economy, or our leaders, be good political economists or good managers of different stakeholders, both government and non-government. I saw this figure some 3 years ago, and I think that it clearly shows that delivery of a transport project or a transport intervention is not just about technology. It's about so many other things, mainly non-physical, intangible things. Delivering transport interventions involve a lot of politics and economics. It is not just about technology. Now, where do we go from here? Okay, what kind of leader do we need? I think what we need is an advocate and practitioner of good governance, transparency, accountability, and multi-sectoral engagement. This means someone with ability to run a government well, not just promising it, but someone who has a track record for it. Another leader we need, another characteristic of a leader we need is he or she must be a champion of all, especially the marginalized, rooting for the improvement of people's lives. I titled this presentation as Sustainable Transport, Improving People's Lives, because it is not just about transport. Transport is not an end in itself. Even sustainable transport is not an end in itself. The real end is improving people's lives. We need a person who is deeply grounded in economic, social, and environmental issues of transport. Now, the birthday celebrant today, in the video that we saw earlier, clearly has a very strong grasp of the importance of transport, especially public transport. The kind of leader that we need is an advocate and actual user of sustainable transport. We know that the president, the candidate we are rooting for, actually gets it. She actually gets the message of sustainable transport. And among the candidates that we have, she is the sole candidate that clearly and strongly gets the advocacy and the principles of sustainable transport, being an advocate and a user of sustainable transport herself. On that note, thank you for listening. I'll be happy to answer your questions when we go to the open forum after the presentation of my colleague, Dr. FILLONE. Thank you very much.
Salamat Dr. Montalbo, Dr. Dayo Montalbo for that talk on public transportation, lalo na yung mga elements na hinahanap natin dun sa susunod nating magiging pangulo, sa susunod nating magiging leader, no? Malaking bagay yan kasi nalaman natin na yung presidente natin, yung susunod, syempre mag-a-appoint yan ng mga secretary for transportation, di ba? At iba pang mga opisyal na alam naman natin ay dapat din involved, no, doon sa ating pagpapabuti ng transportasyon at traffic sa ating bansa. Bago tayo tumuloy sa susunod nating speaker, no, meron po tayong isang mensahe galing sa ating Senador Kiko Pangilinan. Doc Andy. Ayan.
Paano nga ba maging katulad mo? Sapat na ba ang maging mabuting anak? At maging responsable at mapagmahal na magulang? Sapat na ba ang maging matagumpay sa napiling larangan? Sapat na ba ang pag-abot sa pinakamalayong lugar? At maging boses ng mga taong hindi napapakinggan ng tinig? Sapat na ba ang laging pagtulong sa oras ng trahedya at pagsubok? Sapat na ba ang pagkakaroon ng tapang upang ipaglaban ang bayan? Paano nga bang maging katulad mo? Isang tanong na gumagabay sa akin ngayon, sa aking hangarin. Isang tanong na matagal mo nang binigyan ng sagot. Hindi namin kailangan maging tulad mo. Dahil ipinakita mo na katulad mo rin kami. Katulad mo lang ang bawat Pilipino na ginagamit ang husay, kabutihan at pagmamahal upang maiangat ang pamilya at bayan. Maligayang kaarawan, VP Lenny.
Thank you. And pinakikita nyo siguro ngayon sa atin yung slide natin. Gusto lang natin din itaguyod itong kwentong inhinyero at kabayang overseas or kwentong Kiko. Ito ay yung Webtalk na nangyari February 18, no? And ito, no, ay makikita natin yung iba-ibang mga karanasan, no, at mga na-share sa atin ng ating mga kababayan, no, na currently abroad, mga OFW sila sa Gulf region, no? So siguro ito ay magandang ma-revisit din natin, no, at makakonect din tayo sa ating mga OFW engineers, no, na patuloy ding sumusuporta, no, sa ating mga inisyatibo dito sa ating mahal na bayang Pilipinas. So at this point, I'll turn it over now, no, to our co-moderator, Dr. Sel Paringit. Sel?
Hello, magandang hapon. Sandali lang. Ayan, nagka-technical problem lang po sandali.
Magandang hapon.
Magandang hapon, naririnig ako?
Loud and
Yes
clear.
po, ma'am.
Okay, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Maria Cecilia Paringit. Okay, sa akong geodetic engineer, so you could call me Maricel. Graduate ako ng UP Diliman and my master's in urban regional planning. So nagtapos din po ako ng Doctor of Engineering sa Tokyo Institute of Technology. So sa kasalukuyan po, parte ako ng bilang associate professor sa De La Salle University, Department of Civil Engineering. Dati rin po ako nagturo sa UP Diliman at Piante University at Miriam College. So ako lang po ay naligaw sa komunidad ng civil engineer. So ako po ay isa talagang geodetic engineer. So ang ipakikilala ko po ngayon bilang moderator ay ang susunod na magsasalita. Our next speaker is Dr. ALEXIS FILLONE, my colleague and mentor in the Civil Engineering Department de La Salle University. He earned his BS in Civil Engineering degree cum laude from Central Philippine University, Iloilo City. His Master's of Engineering in Transportation at the Asian Institute of Technology, AIT, Bangkok, Thailand. His PhD in Urban Regional Planning at the School of Urban Regional Planning, UP Diliman. So just recently, last November 26, 2021, he was conferred as specialist in civil engineering education by the Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers during the 47th PICE National Convention. Nako, napakatagal na po ng kanyang experience as a teacher in the field of transportation planning and traffic engineering. Napakarami na rin po niya naging estudyante na ngayon sa master's and PhD. And he has more than 20 years of experience in transport research, focusing on travel behavior analysis, travel demand modeling, urban transport planning, and traffic impact studies. Okay, he has many publications din po sa journals, saka meron din siyang co-authorship, may 2 libro. Currently is the project leader of the Sustainable Technology Assisted Route Planning for Region 6, tawag dito Star Plan. Okay, under the DOST P-shared funded research project. Okay, aside from that, meron din po siya iba pang mga project tulad ng Transport Infrastructure Development Assessment using a multi-regional interoperability input-output model, saka easing port congestion and other transport and logistic issues. So, di ko na po papahabain. Pakikilala ko na po ulit sa inyo si Dr. Alex FILLONE, our next speaker. Thank you po.
Okay. Thank you, Doc Maricel, for the kind introduction. So can you hear me? I'm currently in one of the hotels in Ross City because of this project, Star Plan 6, and we are doing our experiments in relation
Yes, sir.
to
Loud and clear.
Okay. So I will be presenting integrating and operationalizing public transport route plans from the regional to the municipal level. So as mentioned by Sir DAYO, Sir DAYO was my PhD advisor in School of Urban Regional Planning. So he already presented the sustainable transport concept. So this time we'll have more specific examples. So this is the flow of my presentation. I'll start with a background and regarding our Star Plan 6 research project, where most of my presentation would come from, and also discuss how the data were obtained for this research and types of public transport service operation. That means we will try to operationalize the concepts as applied here in Region 6 and some summary issues and challenges. Okay. I think Sir DAYO already mentioned about the problem of our public transport system. And of course, it has been a long time that we did not address this problem. And of course, we know the supply and demand problem. and scheduling problem that if you are a public transport user, that you'll encounter on a daily basis in Metro Manila. So actually, we try to introduce this research in Region 6 para hindi magiging Metro Manila yung mga other regions natin. So hopefully, we can address it now before it will become like Metro Manila, that it's hard to really solve the transportation problem of Metro Manila because it's getting very complex in the current situation. So, of course, you have heard about the PUB modernization program of the national government. It's really a very commendable project by our current administration, and hopefully this will continue in the next administration. Of course, hopefully our VP Lenny will be the next president. And of course, this was also affected by the pandemic. And yung target nito, sana by 2018, as mentioned, Filipinos will have a pleasant commuting experience. And we know that naging worse pa because, of course, of the pandemic and some other issues in the Department of Transport. Okay, so we have, under this program, 10 major components, but my focus will be more on the route rationalization. How do we lay out our routes in such a way that we can address the demand? So in this case, I'll have specific examples in Region 6. So that will be the focus of my presentation. And if you are familiar with the local public transport route plan, so just like when we are doing comprehensive land use plans, the LGUs like municipalities, cities, and the province are tasked to develop their own route plans. And of course, it's quite new to our planning staff in the LGUs. That's why they were also given training, but maybe it was not enough. That's why hindi ganon ka ganda yung submission rate. So anyway, for the Star Plan 6, we would go farther up to the regional level, wherein the plans of the LGUs from the municipality, city, and province, we will integrate it further into a regional route plan for Region 6. And that is actually the role of the DOTR. So maybe this is the first case where we have the specific examples of how we do the regional route plan. And I think the OTR has not yet done regional route planning, maybe in Mega Manila, but in other regions, it has not been done yet. So to give more specific detail about the Star Plan 6, so the overarching objective of this program is to support the development of a sustainable local public transport route plan and its implementation that integrates the air, road, and maritime transport network of Region 6 using smart technologies. So actually, yung PUB modernization program of the national government is also limited to land transport. So here we will even integrate both also the road, air, and maritime transport. And we will also be introducing smart technologies because it's under the OSTP shirt. But I will not be talking about smart technologies. I will also show you a little bit regarding the smart technologies, but our focus is more on the planning component of this project. So in order to properly plan the public transport system, including maritime transport in the region, so we need to plot the road network, including the sea transport service, water ferry between provinces. So there will be inter-island travel also between Negros Occidental, this is another island, as well as Guimaras province. and Panay Island. So we try to plot this network in order to properly plan the transport system. So on the land base, we plotted all the existing PUB routes, like the jeepneys, 224 routes, buses, 59 routes, AUV or UV Express, 90 routes. So because later we will also be using this in our smart technologies. And aside from the land base, we also consider the water transport system, and most notably yung between Bacolod City and Iloilo and Gamaras, and there are other tourist spots going to Boracay and Isla Hingantes, Sicogon area in northern Iloilo. And if you are familiar now with Guimaras Island, there are improvements in the ferry system. Before you have the outrigger, now they are using the steel hulled or fiberglass hulled boats, which are bigger. And I think this happened because of the accidents way back in August 2019. So in order to properly plan also the transport system, we need to take note. So ito yung sinasabi ni Sir Dayo earlier, that the land use component. So these are the important facilities that attracts or generate trips. So we also plotted that, like in Alipapa, public markets, bagsakan, resorts, universities, hospitals, shopping malls. So these are considered in the route plan. So with regards to the data, in 2018, some of the LGUs conducted a home interview survey, which is around 5% of the household population. Most important data gathered are the number of household trips, location and origin and destination of respondents, trip purpose of respondent, as well as mode use. There were also LGUs who conducted a roadside interview survey. Around 10% of vehicles passing a given road section, where they also more or less gathered the same information. But usually the roadside interview survey is a short questionnaire. The most important are the origin and destination, trip purpose, and transport mode. So we use this in our research. For example, in the case of Iloilo, this is the trip pattern in the province, and on the left, while with regards to the origins and destination of trips, so we can see here the vertical bars. The red ones are the destination, the yellow-green are the origins. So this is only for the AM peak, and we can see that Iloilo City is the point where many trips are going to. That's the destination. So with regards to Guimaras Island, they did a roadside interview survey, I think 3 or 4 locations, and this is the trip pattern. And of course, the point or the location where there are more trips going to is the San Miguel in Hordan area, where you have the what you call the capital, the provincial capital. And as you can see also, there are many trips going to Iloilo City, as well as originating from Iloilo City. So in the case of Antique, they only did this in 2020, a little bit affected by the pandemic. And this is the trip pattern, because Antique is like a strip of land along the western coast of Panay Island. So that's for Antique. And currently, in the case of Negros Occidental, Aklan and Capiz, they are still doing their data gathering. And hopefully in the next 2 months, will complete their home interview survey. So anyway, if we are going to plan the whole region, so with those data gathered, so starting from the LGU and city level, so they will be planning their public transport system, and that will be reflected in the regional level. In the provincial level first, then for all the provinces, that will be integrated in the regional level. So it would be best that we start from the bottom going up to the regional level, so that of course we can also see impacts of transport projects from even at the city level, and we can see the impact at the provincial and regional level. So in a way, this is the approach in integrating the, in this case, the public transport system in the region. So as you can see here, so we have plotted the public transport routes as well as the sea routes, sea transport routes. So from the city level, that can be reflected to the provincial, then to the regional level. And any improvements you do in the city or province, you can also see the impact in the regional level. So the same case for the rest of the provinces. So here, this is from, in the case of San Jose, the capital town, the province of Antique, and towards the region. So anyway, in order to address the inefficiency in the public transport system, we know that even in the regions we have also problems. So ideally, we can look at the public transport system at the local, and where we introduce like a local bus service, and there could also be limited stops like the red one and the express bus service. So here, each type of service only stop on its designated stop, and passengers would know about it. And in advanced public transport system, not only the routes are integrated, but also the fare system. So meaning if you are going to use the public transport system, and if you want to use your beep card, you can even get discounts when you transfer from a local to the express service. And I would say also that for the public transport system, it should go inside the city. As long as you can properly manage the stops and the routes, they will not be the one that actually would be causing the congestion. Unlike what we are doing in Metro Manila, where we put the terminals outside the Metro Manila, so it's really an inconvenience to our passengers. So anyway, what is happening now in our public transport system is that all modes operate. So if you have the national road, all types of modes can fly along the main highway, and all modes can also stop and pick up and drop off passengers anywhere along the road. So what we will have is what we are having would be fierce competition among modes to pick up passengers, and could also result to accidents, and at the very least local congestion at the point where we have the bus stop or where passengers congregate. And there is no defined schedule, and no service frequency is being followed, and each vehicle behave on its own. that is actually being addressed by the PUB modernization, where we would like the service to be fleet managed, but there are, of course, issues that are currently being addressed, and due to the pandemic, medyo we have problems. And although also there is a standard fare matrix, in some cases, like the tricycles and UV Express, the fares are not consistent. Okay, so with that, we would like to, just like what we are doing in Region 6, we would like to propose something like this, wherein the tricycles, e-trike, and even motorcycle for hire service should only be limited to local roads and subdivisions, as long as you properly allocate them. I think hindi rin sila malulugi, ano? While for the local service, we will introduce the modern jeepney or the minibus that I think we can see now in Metro Manila, and even here in Region 6, they are trying to slowly introduce this in some of the routes. And we can have a limited stop, like the maybe the EDSA carousel is an example, where it only stops at major stations, and as well as the express bus, which is maybe the P2P service, and in some cases the UV Express, where it only starts from an origin and end at a destination. So if we try to apply this in, like for example, in Antique, for example, from San Jose going to Colasi town. Colasi town is one of the bigger towns in Antique. So we can have something like this, wherein we have express service from town to town, and there could also be limited stop service, as well as local service from town to town, while feeder service would be those going inside the local roads, and even municipal and provincial roads and subdivision roads. So I will try to explain a little bit each one. So for the express service, so this is a point-to-point service from an origin and a final destination. And the fare could be a flat fare, just like the P2P service in Metro Manila. However, passenger can disembark anywhere along the route at a designated stop, but the vehicle cannot pick up passengers along the route and can only drop off passengers, because we can say that the seat is already paid when the vehicle starts from the origin, so the vehicle need not pick up passengers, because bayad na yung upuan. And this is to also eliminate the competition between the local service. While the limited stop service, the PUB unit can pick up and drop off passengers only at key stops, like the town's poblacion. And the PUB unit can drop off passengers also in between poblacion, but the bus cannot pick up passengers along the route in between poblacion, because that will be competing with the local service, the blue one. And there may be locations along the route with high passenger demand, so depending on the service standard agreement, where they may be allowed to drop off and pick up passengers on these stops or location. And fare could be in dependent kilometerage. So in the case of the local service, because based from our laws, we should not allow tricycles along national roads. So this will replace the tricycles that serve passengers anywhere along the route, like the national road. and fare may be flat if the length or route is equal or less than 5 kilometers. And in the case of feeder service, they will not be allowed to use the national highway, like the tricycles and even the motorcycle for hire. They will only be allowed in local streets, subdivision roads, or municipal and provincial roads. So actually, for the motorcycle for hire, maybe we can have two types. So one should have to maybe allowed along national road, but it should be with more safety features. If a provincial municipal road is provided with a local service, the feeder modes may still serve the road, especially during off-peak periods. And the fare can also be flat or on a zonal basis. So in the design of the municipal routes, for municipalities, they are tasked to plan the roads within the municipality. That's your intra-municipal PUB route. So usually what they are doing is from the poblacion out up to the end or border barangay with the adjacent towns. So just like here in the case of Sebaste in Antique or here in Kulasi. In this case, the local service again will only feed into the minibuses serving the national road. However, maybe another option would be to modify the route wherein inter-town service from one poblacion to the next poblacion could be served by the local service. And in this case, this will now become an inter-municipality route, and that will be the task of the province to design these routes. So in our research, we are trying to analyze which one would be better, the inter-municipality or the intra-municipality type of service. So focusing on one municipality, like here we have the Patnongon municipality in Antique, and we have here the trip movement in the municipality where the thicker lines represent more trips. But again, this is a morning trip, and we can see that most trips end at the poblacion. So in this case, they plan to put up 4 routes using the fill cab or the smaller jeepneys. And if we try to lay out the routes, so we have here the 4 routes, and all of them would end at the poblacion, given that the trips are the end trips or destination is at the poblacion. So the challenge here is how to integrate the local service with the tricycles or the feeder modes, because if we are going to remove the tricycles along the national highway, so we have to properly allocate the tricycles on the local roads. So anyway, here is one example of the estimated passenger demand. On the bottom left, for this route here, we can see that more trips again are going towards the poblacion compared to the trips going away from the poblacion on the bottom right. So in order to integrate the feeder modes like the tricycles, so we may need to zone the tricycle and allocate them to these zones. So here in the case of Patnongon, we are proposing these zones. So some several barangays. We have 4 zones. Some have smaller barangays, like here. The green one is only for the poblacion, but of course this can still be modified. But when we try to zone them, we also have to identify the mini terminals, or where they can wait, and along the national road. So they can only serve the local road, so they need to be located adjacent yung kanilang waiting area or mini terminals on the national road. So we are doing some preliminary analysis also, wherein the number of tricycles can be related to the characteristic of the area or municipality in terms of land area, number of households, population, or even population density. So of course, this will still be modified because later on we will be removing them along the national road. So these are some of the initial results. Like we need from the current data 5.56 tricycles out of needed for 100 households, or in terms of population 1.36 tricycles for every 100 people in the municipality. But we are going to improve the model, wherein we will still consider other factors like the natural environment, like topography, whether it's mountainous or flat, the design environment, as mentioned by Sir Dayo. We need to consider the land use, the characteristic, and the layout of the road network, as well as the presence of other public transport service. While of course, depending on the socio-demographic characteristic also of the area, like most important would be the car and motorcycle ownership. That would affect the choices of people when they travel, and even the political environment, like presence of cooperatives and informal organizations. So this would be also one of the part of the output of our research. So going to the last part now regarding issues and challenges. So the first is that the key to a successful PUV service route design is an accurate passenger demand estimate in the LGU level. And during this, the conduct of the surveys, we were not really involved in their data gathering. So of course, we can still improve on this part. And second, the road network system of the LGU level is highly dependent on the national road passing them. Hence, tricycles have no other option but to use the national road. And sometimes currently they allow tricycle to use the rightmost lane. And not enough local roads to serve the residences, and may also be related to the land use characteristics of the at the LGU level. And houses are also sometimes too spread out. Also, public transport operators and drivers are used to the demand-driven type of service, where revenues are tied to the volume of passengers carried. And maybe we need to change it to the supply-driven approach, where public transport operators are paid in terms of passenger seat kilometer they provide. Actually, they're doing it in Metro Manila, but there are some concerns, because one is that you should have a good monitoring and evaluation system. If you do the latter, yung supply-driven approach. Next, most of our transport operators and drivers are still not used to being fleet managed, where schedules of PUV frequencies, arrivals, and departures are religiously followed. To some degrees, the P2P services in Metro Manila follow a certain schedule. So maybe we're also going in that direction. And also a major concern is the capacitating of local planning staff to develop the route plans. And of course, they will also be doing the monitoring and evaluation of existing services, because this is quite new to them. So in our research project, we are also in collaboration with local universities so that the SUCs can help the LGU in their route plans, and maybe in the monitoring and evaluation also of existing public transport service. So anyway, I think this is the last slide to introduce you a little bit of the transport technology we are doing. So this is what we are doing currently here in we are testing this is what we call the Atlas user, wherein you can trace the movement of buses while you are riding the bus, and you will know the location and the existing volume of passengers inside the bus when it's traveling along its route. Medyo inside the bus. So yung problem then dito is that so because of the poor internet connectivity, which of course VP Lenny also mentioned that we need to address. So medyo yung sakay na passenger, but anyway, we have shown that it's working. So you can trace the bus as well as the volume or the number of passengers inside the bus as it travels. And if you are a passenger, so you will be able to know the location and of course yung existing passenger inside the bus. So this will be actually free and downloadable, just like a simple application for like Google Map or Waze. But now it's only available in Region 6. And of course, we also have this portable traffic counter, which we have been also doing, and we also apply this, tested it here in Region 6. So this portable traffic counter, which can be, of course, being portable, it's like a small maleta, which you can bring anywhere to count traffic. So these are two of the technologies we are developing for counting traffic and management of transit. Okay. So anyway, that would be the last slide. So again, thank you to DOST PSERD for the funding support of this project. So this project was also delayed by 1 year, and we will be finishing this within the year, and we extend this project for 1 year due to the pandemic also, and only now naka field experiments coming here in Region 6. So I think that would be all. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, Dr. FILLONE, Sir Alex. No? Napakaganda po ng mga pinakita niyo sa amin na parang inaalay niyo talaga yung inyong nalalaman, no? Para tulungan yung mga ibang region, no? Hindi matulad sa nagiging problema natin sa Metro Manila, at pinagsasama niyo yung mga technology, no? na nakikita natin sa ibang mga pag-aaral, no? At sinusubukan natin, at hindi kayo natatakot na gawin ito sa inyong napiling region. Okay? At this point po, no? Namaya po magkakaroon tayo ng mga question and answer, pero isa muna pong palatastas.
Hello sa mga bumubuo ng Civil Engineers for Lenny. Maraming salamat sa pagkakataon na makapagbigay ng maikling pananalita sa inyong virtual talk series. Napakahalaga ng papel na ginagampanan ng civil engineers sa pag-unlad ng bansa at ng ating ekonomiya. Kaya mabuting tiyakin na maayos at walang bahid ng katiwalian ang lahat ng transaksyon ninyo sa pamahalaan mula sa permit, buwis at iba pang mga requirement. Sa ganitong paraan, makatutulong kayo sa pagsusulong ng ating hangarin na isang gobyernong tapat para aangat ang buhay ng lahat. Mabuhay ang Civil Engineers for Lenny. Ito pong muli si Atty. Chel Jokno. Kay Jokno, ang dehado magiging yamado.
Nagbabalik po kami ni Doc Reg. Ayan, may mga tanong na po, Doc Reg.
Ako nga yung ating chat box no? So medyo
Oo,
marami
bilis.
po tayong tanong dito. Siguro unahin na natin yung Sel, yung mga may naunang question kagad no regarding sa traffic. Maganda to kasi ito isa sa mga topic na madalas yata naiiwasan no. Correct me if I'm wrong, Doc Dayo, Doc Alex no. Basahin ko na lang no. So do you think that we can ease the traffic congestion by taxing people traveling in certain roads? No? Is it possible to tax private cars traveling through EDSA, for example? No? And how would the government implement it? No? So ito yung nanggaling kay Jake Avenido. Sino bang gustong sumagot dun sa tanong? Maunang sumagot. No? Alam naman natin, di ba, for example, sa Singapore, di ba, meron tayong electronic road pricing. Yan. So, very successful yung ERP na yan sa Singapore. Yung mga ganyan ba, pwede ba natin gawin yan dito sa atin sa Pilipinas?
If I may.
Yes,
I was actually going to cite the experience of Singapore. The private car users going to central areas get taxed or they have to pay a toll. But it isn't just, that is an example of a stick. It's a penalty for using the private car. But the Singapore government doesn't stop there. The government provides a viable and attractive alternative, which is in the form of a very good quality public transport system. Not just the rail lines, but it's really a network of public transport services with a train system, with bus services, whose network are so well planned that you don't walk more than 400 meters to the nearest bus stop from wherever you're living or residing. So Singapore has done it, but they don't just tax, they also provide attractive alternatives. Now, can that be done in our cities, in Metro Manila, for example? They have thought of that so many times, even when the Metro Manila Urban Transport Integration Study, or MUTIS, which was done about 20 years ago. It's a transport master plan for Metro Manila, considered taxing car users in what is called congestion pricing. But some challenges identified were, where do you draw the cordon? Where do you draw the boundary beyond which car users have to be taxed? And not only that, what good public transport alternative is being offered to those who will be taxed? So these are questions that will have to be answered. These are challenges that will have to be hurdled. You don't just tax, you have to provide a good public transport alternative. And hopefully with new leadership, with a new, decisive, strong, and clearly minded leadership, then we can have a combination of a carrot and stick working for us.
Yeah, I agree with Sir Dayo. And of course, another stick would be the parking charges. That would be another stick. But of course, again, you should have a very efficient public transport system para may choice yung tao to leave their cars at home. Yeah. Thank you.
If I may add, if I may add, the ideal situation is when travelers voluntarily leave their cars at home because it's simply impractical to use one's car going to the city center. And how do you make it impractical? One is through tax or congestion pricing. Another is making parking scarce or expensive, and making public transport the attractive alternative. This combination will create that behavior change, that travelers will not think twice, or it will just be a natural choice for them to leave their cars at home, especially for work trips. It's the kind of trip that they do every day, and almost at the same time in the morning.
Parang hindi ka marinig, Doc Reg. Naka-off yung... Nakamute ka, Doc Reg. Ito ka bang sinasabi kanina?
Ayan. May follow-up question tayo, Sel, ano?
Oo.
Yung, alam natin, tumataas yung presyo ng gasolina ngayon. And siguro, matanong na rin natin itong ating dalawang speakers ngayon. Yung gas price kaya, pwede ba natin yan gawing mahal para sa private vehicle? So, disincentive tapos babaan natin para sa public utility vehicles. Do you think yun yung isa sa posibleng epektibong paraan para ma-encourage yung mas marami gumamit ng public transportation?
May I? Yes, of course, that could be another option. But then again, you should provide the alternative, as mentioned by Sir Dayo, that people would not think twice of using the public transport system if it's going to be efficient.
Okay. So, Doc Dayo, meron ka pa idadagdag doon?
Oh, I would, thank you, Alex, thank you, Maricel. I would just like to add that additional taxes is politically touchy. It's a very politically touchy thing. And so politicians, leaders would probably have that as a last resort. But to make it more palatable, to make high taxes palatable, there should be a good alternative.
Okay, sige. Mukhang nasagot na po yung mga dalawang tanong. So ito nga sumunod po ay medyo may kinalaman naman po yung katanungan ni Jude Esguera. Will there be public consultation? Will there be public consultations? So kung ano man yung when demand-driven routes are removed, there will be opposition. How can commuters prepare so that public deliberations are more rational than emotional? Kasi talaga nauuna talaga emotion minsan di ba? Mahihirapan tayo. Ito ngayon, paano na magiging rational? More on mag-isip muna yung
issue lagi yan.
Oo, di ba? So, sasabihin niya, sorry, ano po, dala-dala ng aking emosyon.
Na-rationalize po namin kayo.
Oo. Sige po, meron po kayang...
I think ito yung demand-driven and supply-driven. I think I'm talking about on the part of the operators and drivers. When you say demand-driven, they run after the passengers in order to earn more revenues. So that means whether demand, I think the supply-driven would be advantageous to the commuters because whether as long as it's specified as a service standard, like every 5 minutes may bus na darating, whether may laman man o wala, o may commuter man o wala. So scheduled. In that case, scheduled. Naka-fleet manage. So it will be very advantageous to the commuters. But again, para hindi rin malugi yung government, they should be properly monitored and adjusted kung parang punti yung pasahero dyan. So medyo you have to increase the headway a little bit para hindi rin magastos sa gasolina. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Alex raised a very important issue. in his presentation, and that is yung supply-driven and demand-driven. He was actually referring to a revolutionary change in the business model behind public transport operations. As he explained earlier, the current revenue or business model is that the revenue of operators is based on the number of passengers carried. And hence, as a result, we have this reckless, cutthroat competition and undesirable behavior of public transport drivers fighting tooth and nail for a single passenger. And that is the old business model that fully will be changed. In fact, that is one of the objectives of the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program, and shifting from that old model to the supply-driven model, which is in the form of service contracting. Now, let me just correct the misimpression, the wrong notion that service contracting means libreng sakay. No, service contracting means that operators are paid not based on the number of passengers served, but based on a level of a quantity of service provided. It can be in terms of number of vehicle kilometers per day or number of seat kilometers per day, not based on the number of passengers served. Because if that were the case, like if with the current business model, we have this reckless behavior of drivers that we've been cursed for so many decades now. And so I think there's a need to change the business model, and as emphasized by Alex. Now the question also includes consultation. I watched the covenant signing yesterday between VP Lenny and some transport sector representatives, and she said that, or she emphasized the importance of stakeholder engagement and social preparation of any intervention that will be introduced. For instance, the PUVMP, the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program. She said that there's a need. It is in principle a very good program, but there's a need to improve the social preparation of all those who will be impacted or affected by the program. And I fully agree with what she said. There's a need to prepare, socially prepare those, especially those who will be negatively affected by the program. And that's through stakeholder engagement.
So, paano raw kung Doc Dayo and Doc Alex, so anong kadalasan yung mga pamaraan para magkaroon ka ng effective na social engagement sa mga ganitong klase apektadong tao? Is it enough na magpatawag lang ng representative, or kailangan pa ng may training pa ulit, mayroong passenger special training?
Kasi obviously hindi ito one-time thing di ba? Hindi
correct.
Tayo ngayon, tas bukas okay na.
Correct. In fact, stakeholder engagement should be made an inherent part of the process, not just as a compliance to a requirement of, let's say, the World Bank or the ADB, which requires stakeholder engagement. It should be meaningfully done, and it should be made an intrinsic part of the process. How do you do it? Well, you have to come up with the right messages, which is evidence-based. There should be reliable data. And I appreciate the presentation of Alex showing recommendations solidly based on data. So, para maiwasan natin na maging emotional yung discussion, dapat maging objective. Siguro malaki din ang papel dyan ng academe. Kasi ang academe ang dapat objective, walang emosyon. Nagbabase lamang sa datos. So malaki ang papel din ng academe dyan. Dapat na ma-manage din ang stakeholder engagement sa pamagitan ng mga mensahe na hindi nakakapag messages that will not turn the engagement into a mob. So maraming techniques ang stakeholder engagement, at it is in fact a specialization. Stakeholder management is a very tricky, a very touchy, a very complicated thing, but there are specialists for that.
So not necessarily engineer no? So mga nasa kailangan merong magaling public. Oo. Tapos ang maganda rito sinabi ni Doc Dayo na kailangan is supported ng data. So hindi natin assume na hindi nakakaintindi yung mga tao, no? Parang hindi natin binobola. So as much as possible, titingnan natin sila nakakaintindi. So meron dun sa pamaraan na lang nung ano, kung sino man yung champion or kung sino yung kanilang magiging representative, no, na makakapagsalita. Pero importante, hindi lang muka, no? Kailangan meron talagang parang may laman, may utak yung sinasabi.
Correct. At saka importante, malinaw sa lahat, ano ba ang vision natin? Ano ba ang gusto nating ma-achieve? Gusto ba natin lahat may kotse? O gusto ba natin lahat may mobilidad? Sa pamamaraan na hindi nakakasira sa kalikasan, sa pamamaraan na lahat ay kayang gawin, sa pamamaraan ang lahat ay napoprotektahan ang dignidad. Ano ba ang vision talaga natin? Dapat malinaw yun sa lahat. And it must be a commonly shared vision.
Yeah, may I also just
Yes,
to add, just like in Singapore, like they would say na yung objective nila within 30 minutes on the average, they will reach their destination.
Right.
Yeah, that could be a very specific na objective. Para
Measurable.
measurable. So that is why, as mentioned ko rin, na may continuous monitoring and evaluation para pwedeng i-adjust para hindi naman malugi kung hindi maganda kunti yung yung demand, something like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Nababanggit natin yung public transport,
Madami yung
tanong
tanong
dito eh. Oo, marami ng tanong. Isang tanong dito siguro or dalawa, medyo quick rin din na
quick na lang po. Oo, kasi time.
Patungkol dun sa EDSA carousel. So, tuwing kailan nyo po marerecommend ang mga buses ay mayroong special bus stops sa EDSA carousel and yung pagkakaroon daw ng special lane for PUV. Yan. So ito yung priority lane siguro, no, para sa mga PUVs natin. EDSA carousel, syempre alam naman natin may mga issue pa rin yan ngayon, no? Hindi pa na perfect yung operations niyan. Ano po ba yung masasabi natin diyan sa operations niyan ngayon?
May I
yes,
anyway, yung problem din actually is the road geometry natin sa EDSA. Nauna kasi yung mga roads. So medyo mahirap i-fit na yung busway natin. But I would recommend na huwag tayo mag-focus sa EDSA. We need to provide also similar service in other major roads like the other radial and circumferential roads para ma-spread out. Kasi if you look at the movement of people in EDSA, hindi naman lahat punta ng EDSA. May other destination yan sila. Kung ma-spread out mo, hindi rin magko-congest yung buses natin sa EDSA. So, and again, we have to properly gather the correct data and see how to introduce other routes in the...
Balikan natin yung collection ng data mamaya kasi may nakita akong tanong tungkol sa collection ng data, no? Pero siguro ito, no? Dinedesign ba natin yung time nung stop and go ng mga traffic lights, no? Kasi may mga lugar daw na napakatagal mag-green or sobrang tagal ng red, ano? So ito ba, na-optimize ba natin to? Siguro manggaling na lang sa speakers natin. Dayo, Alex, ano ba yung traffic lights? Ma-adjust ba natin yan?
Our traffic signals should be smart signals, meaning they should be responsive to the existing volume of vehicles on the road. The other form of traffic signal is the fixed traffic signal. Para yung smartphone at saka idiot phone. Yung traffic signal natin dapat smart, hindi idiot. Which ang smart means responsive to almost real-time conditions on the road. That way, the performance of the traffic signal can be optimized. Now, there are still traffic signals in Metro Manila that are the fixed cycle signal. Kahit walang sasakyan, nagre-red or nag-green. So, dapat smart signal sila. And traffic signal should also be tailor-fit to give priority to public transport vehicles. Because there will be more beneficiaries if traffic signals give way or give priority to a public transport vehicle. Pwede yun. There are traffic
Pwede na
signals
ma-detect,
that
ano?
give
Oo,
priority
pwedeng ma-detect.
through the proper detection. There's technology, available technology to detect public transport vehicles on the road. But they become part of a system. So you have the public transport vehicles and the traffic signal system that gives priority to public transport vehicles.
Actually, yung isang tanong dito parang related din sa yung gathering of data, no? Do we need to have an agency like MMD to gather traffic data? And nabanggit nga ni Doc Dayo na may mga technologies naman na kaya makakuha na rin ng data that traffic signals could already response to available. Pero ayun, kailangan ba na mayroon pang agency to gather this in order for academia and future researchers to study road or for better transportation projects?
Yeah, may I
Yes po.
answer that?
Yes, Alex.
So, actually, marami na tayong data. Yung problem is the management. Parang walang continuity yung data. Hindi natin alam yung nangyari. Like 5 years ago, may gather na data, then we gather a new data. So, kailangan sana yung database natin in Metro Manila, yung naka-integrate, so that yung what we have gathered previously can be used to the next round of study. So, I think, yun, we need to properly manage our database. That would be part when we, like for example, we will try to overhaul the database of our transportation system. So kailangan maganda yung tago and manage ng data that we have, so that this can be used to the next, yung may continuity yung data natin. So yun yung problem natin sa Metro Manila.
So parang sinasabi ni Doc Alex na parang maging part ng institution din yung ng ARM na magkaroon ng mga data management, and at dun sa magkakaroon ng, dun na pinag-uusapan kung how regular yung updating, di ba, as need arises. So hangga't hindi naka-centralize yung mga ganitong mga data at merong tumitingin, no, kung ano yung mga pangailangan, then wala tayong parang natutulog lang, hindi natin napapakinabang kung ano pa yung mga nag-gather na data before. Siguro, Doc Reg, it's 5:07. What do you think?
Siguro, let's conclude itong ating open forum. May question lang dito ang ating magiting na si Dr. Andy Oreta. How would you rate yung LTO, LTFRB, MMDA? Ano ba, 1 to 10?
Bilive tayo, sir.
Kaya ba yung grading scale kasi na UP at ng Lasal eh. Pag sinabi ni Doc Alex na 4, medyo alanganin sa kay Doc Dayo. No? Pag sinabi naman ni Dayo na 1, alanganin naman sa Lasal. Oo.
It depends on the criteria.
Ano na lang, level of service na lang, A to F.
I don't know.
My assessment is they need a strong leader to keep them together. And we know who that is.
Mukhang yun nga yung mukhang yun na nga yung sagot talaga, sir. Sir Alex?
I second the motion. Comment by Sir Dayo. Yeah.
Someone who will not just say we're on top of the situation, but someone who is really in control. That's what we need.
A good listener, sir. Good open arms na wini-welcome lahat, no, yung academe, stakeholders, no. Kayang mag-connect sa lahat. Siguro yun yung natin, no. This connectivity naman lahat tungkol sa transport no, connecting all. So Doc Reg.
Yeah, at this point, may we invite, meron tayong mga participants kasi galing sa JPICE, ano?
Yes,
siguro, panghuling komento or tanong, may invite the representative of JPICE to comment or maybe ask a question. Ito kanina kasi meron tayo. Yes.
Yes po, meron.
Camille?
Yes po, good afternoon po sa inyo. So I am Camille from JPI's LNM. I am the representative of the organization po. So super naman po, I would like to thank all the organizers of the Lugaw ng Kaalaman, Civil Engineering Web Talks. So very po siya, informative for us na katulad namin mga student leaders po sa mga organizations na lalo na ang J5s po ay merong different schools or meron kaming mga 15 schools within Manila po. So, yan, thank you po for the knowledge na binigay sa atin ng mga speakers po natin, kay Dr. DAYO Montalbo and to Dr. ALEXIS FILLONE. So, yun po. So far naman po, wala naman pong questions for the presentation. So, yun lang po. Thank you lang po sa knowledge and sa mga dapat namin i-apply sa mga future endeavors po namin.
Maraming mga topic nga. Salamat Camille. Maraming mga topic yung ating mga estudyante na pwedeng pag-aralan. I think Doc Dayo and Doc Alexis will agree na maraming pwedeng puntahan nga. And siguro bago tayo pumunta dun sa ating recognition na part, mabanggit din natin na talagang kailangan din natin pagtibayin yung cooperation between the academe and yung ating mga government agencies and local government units. Yan po yung mga ginagawa ni Doc Alex at ni Doc Dayo sa kanilang mga projects. Ini-involve po natin yung mga local universities and colleges natin kasi yun nga patungkol dun sa mga data collection na yan, kailangan din natin ng sustainability, di ba? Kailangan din natin ng sabihin natin yung involvement ka at the local level para meron din tayong institutional memory pagdating sa mga ganitong mga activities. Sel, tayo sa recognition natin this afternoon.
Oo. Sige. Certificate natin. Ayan. So, Doc Reg, with honor for...
natin. Lugaw ng Kaalaman, Civil Engineering Web Talks would like to present the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Dayo Montalbo for sharing his time and expertise in the Civil Engineering Web Talk number 10, TRAPIK at TRANSPORTASYON, may patutunguhan ka pa. Talking about sustainable transport ngayong 23 April 2022 through Zoom. Signed Emmanuel Llanes, Coordinator for Engineers for Lenny, and Andy Oreta, Convener for CE for Lenny. Thank you, Dr. Dayo Montalbo.
Palakpakan po natin. Ayan. So, the same certificate. Okay, virtual clap, please. Okay, so Lugaw ng Kaalaman, Civil Engineering Web Talks, Certificate of Appreciation is presented to Dr. Alexis FILLONE for sharing his time and expertise in the Civil Engineering Web Talk number 10, TRAPIK at Transportasyon, may patutunguhan ka pa. Public Transport Integration and or Operationalization, given this 23rd of April 2022 through Zoom. So signed by Emmanuel Llanes, Coordinator for Engineers for Lenny, and Andres Winston Oreta, Convener for CE for Lenny. Thank you po. Palakpakan po natin si Dr. Alex FILLONE. Yay! So, siguro pasa na natin sa ating host.
We'd also like to recognize yung participation ng ating Junior Philippine Institute of Civil Engineers, lungsod ng Maynila, for actively promoting and supporting itong ating CE Web Talk number 10. And given on the 23rd April 2022 again through Zoom, signed Emmanuel Llanes, CE for Lenny, and Andy Oreta, Convener CE for Lenny. Salamat sa JPI's Lungsod ng Maynila.
Okay, maraming salamat. Okay, maraming salamat po.
Rox, turnover na namin sa inyo ni Sel.
Okay.
Maraming salamat po, Doc Dayo and Doc Alex for those wonderful and insightful presentations po. So I hope marami pong natutunan ng ating mga participants today in this web talk. And we have some synthesis po, Doc Andy, for the slide. So marami pong nabanggit na mga points po no na-raise po dun sa mga presentations ng ating speakers, and one of them is that ang mahusay na transportasyon ng tao at mga gamit pangkabuhayan ay dapat isulong upang umangat ang bayan. So we have to understand po that transportation is involved po sa ating araw-araw na buhay. Yung mga taong nagtatrabaho, mga taong pumapasok sa eskwelahan, sa iba't ibang sektor po ng ating lipunan, nandyan po ang transportasyon. Okay? So lahat po tayo ay apektado kapag hindi maganda ang transportasyon. At lahat din po tayo ay makikinabang kapag na-develop po natin ang ating transportation infrastructure. Yan. Another insight po is that ang kaunlaran ng isang bansa ay hindi kayang patigilin ng traffic kung ang pamahalaan ay mahusay at matibay ang namumuno ay marunong sumunod sa batas at konstitusyon. Okay. So, wag po natin kalimutan na syempre po ang presidente naman po hindi naman po siya yung gagawa ng lahat po, no? So, meron po siyang mga i-appoint. So, kailangan po natin maghalal ng isang pinuno na mag-a-appoint ng nararapat. Okay, yung mga taong meron pong credential. Okay. So, tayo po dapat po na naghahanap po tayo ng credential sa ating mga ibobotong pinuno, no? So doon po tayo sa may napatunayan at doon po sa tapat maglingkod sa bayan. Okay, so dito po lagi po nating tandaan, pumili tayo ng mga leader na may kakayahan sa paglutas ng iba't ibang problema ng isang bansa. Bumoto tayo ng tama at wag po nating kalimutan, sa gobyernong tapat, angat buhay lahat. Yan. Sige po. Meron po tayong short video na galing kay Vice President Leni Robredo po.
Naging malinaw sa amin, kapag kabataan ng katuwang, laging may maiaambag na bago. Buong-buo ibinibigay ang sarili at laging ibinubuhos ang lahat ng energy sa gawain. As civil engineers, malalim ang gagampanan ninyong tungkulin sa pagpanday ng mundong pinapangarap natin. Engineers find harmony in the moving parts and make sure that every component allows the organic whole to function and work well. You will not only plan, design, and oversee the construction of buildings and infrastructures. In doing so, you will reflect what we value, whom we care for, and what we dream of. You will shape the way we experience things, from roads, railways, and bridges, to harbors, dams, and irrigation systems. Your task is not simply to work on blueprints of metal, wood, and stone. The structures you build will form, in literal and metaphorical concrete, the very backbone of our nation. Ang mensahe ko ngayon sa inyo, pakinggan ang kwento ng mga komunidad. Magbabad sa pinagdaraanan nila. Bitbitin ang mga dalahing bitbit nila. Gawin ang kayang gawin para ibsan ang pagdurusa. And as you make each other's dreams and battles your own, remind one another of the good you are capable of doing. Empower and draw strength from this community and pave the way for even more to follow. Ngayon, higit kailanman, dahil sa inyo, mas lumalakas ang loob namin. Walang pandemyang hindi kayang sugpuin. Walang pagsubok na hindi kayang lampasan kung paiiralan natin ang malasakit at pagtutulungan. Kaya tuloy lang, padayon lang. Lagi ninyong tatandaan, hindi kayo mga bata lang. Mga Pilipino kayong may kakayahan at lakas na gumawa ng mas patas at mas makataong mundo para sa inyong mga sarili at para sa bawat Pilipino. Maraming salamat, mabuhay kayong lahat.
Kay VP Lenny.
Kay VP Lenny.
Vice President. Vice Lenny.
Si Madam VP Lenny is really true to her word.
VP Lenny, sumasagot agad. Wala siyang kaarte-arte na pumunta sa amin.
Totoong leader si Lenny dahil siya ang may puso.
Ako po si Bec de los Santos, isang manggagawa, isang ina,
Overseas Filipino worker.
isang mananahi,
Isang security guard.
Isang abogada.
Isang mangingisda.
medical personnel.
Isang magsasaka.
Dumating mismo si Lenny Robredo.
Lumobo po yung bilang ng estudyante.
Nakatanggap kami ng mga makina. Naging permanente yung trabaho.
Nagbigay ng PPE sa Iloilo.
Tumoble, yung pag-asa namin.
In my experience as an advocate, napagsasaraduhan kami ng pinto. Pero si VP Lenny, siya mismo nagbubukas para anyayahan ang mga taong makipag-usap sa kanya.
Ito po yung tinatawag na community march. Handog po sa amin na aming Vice President. Malaking tulong po kasi nabigyan po kami ng trabaho.
Yung lolo ko, kung hindi daw po siya nadala ng oxygen tank, hindi po siya abot sa ospital. Parang na-feel ko po dun na hindi po talaga kami nila pinabayaan.
Ang kakaibahan ni VP Lenny, yung mga sinasabi niya, ginagawa niya na. Hindi lang puro sinasabi na puro plano.
Ang laki-laking bagay na may isang gobyernong mangangalaga at magkakalinga sa amin.
Nanumbalik ang aming paniniwala na kami makakaahon pa dahil merong isang VP Lenny na magtatanggol sa amin.
Okay, tandaan po natin uli. Number 10 po sa balota, si Madam VP.
Hindi nanggagaling sa pera o
Yan.
area, kundi sa pagkakaisa ng taong bayan. Nasaksihan ko ito sa mga kababayan natin na araw-araw nagbabanat ng buto para makamtan ang mga pangarap na pinagtrabahuhan nila. Nasasaksihan ko to bawat sakuna na nagbabayanihan para sumaklolo sa ating kapwa. Ngayon, nasasaksihan ko to ngayong kampanya sa mga nag-a-attend ng mga rallies kahit pinagbabawalan, sa mga gumagastos ng sariling pera, sa mga kumakatok sa mga pintuan para ayain yung ibang sumama. Ang dahilan ng lahat ng ito ay pag-asa. Pag-asa yung tumutulak sa atin na mangarap na sa dulo ng kadiliman ay may kaliwanagan. Pag-asa ang nagtutulak sa atin para makita natin na ngayon lumiliwanag na, ngayon liliwanag pa, at ngayong darating na halalan ang tatanglaw sa buong bayan, ilaw ng tahanan.
Okay. So, remind lang po natin to everyone, submit the feedback survey after the web talk, especially for the GCash contest winners. You will have to send your name, school, profession, and GCash account to ceforlenny@gmail.com. Meron po tayong corrections dun sa winners for the GCash contest. Yung first question po, we have Leonard John Guillermo from the Zoom chat and Oliver Donzales from the FB Live. For the second question, we have Louis Kua from the Zoom chat and Lowell Petalvo from the FB Live. Okay po. For the feedback survey po and for you to receive your certificate of participation to the Lugaw ng Kaalaman Civil Engineering Web Talk on TRAPIK at Transportasyon, may patutunguhan ka pa, please submit the feedback survey Google form with the link below, or you may use the following QR code to link to the Google form. Yan. Sige po. I think everyone has already taken the QR, and I think we can close the Zoom meeting now. But before we do so, may we request everyone to turn on their cameras for a quick group photo lang po. Yan. Yan. Huwag kayong mahiya, guys. Yung mga estudyante natin. Okay, it's nice to see everyone. Yan. Let's just have a quick group photo for today's web talk.
Ikaw ba kukuha, Rox?
Pwede pong ako na lang po. Opo.
Okay, ikaw.
Sige po. We have so far one screen. One screen pa lang po yung nag-on ng camera. Yung mga students ko dyan, baka gusto nyo tawagin ko kayo. Okay, maybe some of them really are not able to turn on their camera. So I think we can proceed with our group photo. Okay. May question dito, may certificate po ba? Yes, you will be receiving a certificate of participation after you have accomplished the feedback survey form. Yes po. So let me take the screenshot na of yung group photo. Smile tayo, guys. In the count, I will take the screenshot in the count of 3, 2, 1. Okay. Then let me have yung screenshot for the second page. Wait lang po. Ayan. Again, we count 3, 2, 1. Okay. Yan. Sige po, thank you po for attending this civil engineering web talk, and it was nice to meet everyone po. Okay. Ayan, may sinishare po si Doc Andy. Ayan. So maraming salamat po sa pagdalo ninyo sa ating lugaw ng kaalaman. Sana po ay may natutunan kayo at namulat kayo sa mahalagang papel ng inhinyero sa isang matibay, mahusay at tapat na gobyerno. Tandaan, ang boto ninyo ay para sa ating kinabukasan. Sa gobyernong tapat, angat buhay lahat. Sa Team Robredo, Pangilinan tayo. Tandaan po, sa balota number 10, Leni Robredo sa pagka-presidente. Sa vice-presidente, number 7, Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Ayun lang po. Sige po, maraming salamat po, and I hope everyone has a nice day for the rest of the day today po. Sige po. Nood na po tayo nung rally ni yung birthday rally po for Madam VP Leni Robredo. Sige po. Maraming salamat po. Ingat po.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you po.
Take care.